I've always been a huge fan of Dragon Ball Z. I grew up watching the intense battles, cheering for Goku and his friends, and collecting everything I could about the series. From VHS tapes to action figures, I was obsessed. I knew every arc by heart, memorized power levels, and could recite entire dialogues from my favorite episodes. As I got older, my passion never faded. I would rewatch the series every couple of years, always feeling the same rush of excitement. But at some point, I started craving something more, something rare, something unseen. That's when I discovered the dark side of anime fandom. The hidden corners of the internet where people claim to have access to lost media, deleted scenes, and unaired episodes. One night, after diving deep into an old forum dedicated to obscure anime content, I came across a thread titled, "The Episode Toei Doesn't Want You to See." Curious, I clicked. Most of the thread was filled with people arguing over whether the so-called lost episode was real or just another internet hoax. The original poster, someone with the username Zakakarot94, claimed that the episode had been produced but never aired due to its disturbing content. It was supposed to be part of the Majin Buu saga, but something went wrong. They banned it. Only a few copies exist, and everyone who's seen it regrets it. I managed to get my hands on one, but I strongly advise you not to watch it. That was all it took to pique my curiosity. I had seen fake creepypastas before. Pokemon Black version, The Simpsons Dead Bart, the lost SpongeBob SquarePants episode Squidward's Suicide. All just stories. Made up nonsense. So I replied, if it's so bad, why don't you just delete it? Minutes later, a private message popped up in my inbox. It was from Kakarot94. You don't understand. It's not that simple. I deleted it, but it keeps coming back. The file reappears. The voices don't stop. That was enough to make me pause. Clearly, this guy was just trying to scare people. But before I could reply, another message came through. But if you really want to see it, I won't stop you. Just remember, I warned you. Below his message was a link to an old, sketchy-looking website. The URL was filled with random characters, and the page itself was bare bones, just a black background with a single download button. The file name? DBZ Final Chuck Cut Davey I. At this point, I was convinced it was either a prank or a poorly made fan edit, but against my better judgment, I clicked download. As the file transferred to my computer, I felt a strange sense of unease, like I had just done something I couldn't take back. The estimated download time was 6 minutes and 66 seconds. I laughed at the obvious joke, but when the file finally finished, the timer read 6:06:06. I felt a chill, but brushed it off as a coincidence. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the file. Then, finally, I clicked play. The episode began, and that's when everything went wrong. The video started like any other Dragon Ball Z episode. The iconic Chala Head Chala intro didn't play. Instead, it opened directly into a scene from the Majin Buu saga. Goku and Vegeta were inside Majin Buu's body, navigating the strange, organic tunnels in search of Gohan, Garten, Trunks, and Piccolo. At first, everything seemed normal, but within seconds, I noticed something was off. The animation quality wasn't quite right. It looked darker, rougher, as if it had been drawn hastily. The colors were muted and the shading was heavier than usual, giving the characters a gaunt appearance. Even the sound was strange. The background music was barely audible, as if someone had turned the volume down. There was an eerie, distant humming underneath the dialogue, like something was playing in reverse. And then there were the characters' expressions. Goku, normally cheerful and determined, looked hollow. His eyes lacked their usual sparkle. His movements felt sluggish, almost unnatural. Every now and then, his face would twitch slightly, as if the animation was corrupted. Vegeta was no better. His usual scowl was still there, but something in his eyes was different. He looked worried, which was odd. Vegeta rarely showed fear unless he was up against something truly terrifying. The two warriors continued walking through Boo's body in silence. Silence. That's when I realized something disturbing. There was no dialogue. At first, I thought it was an issue with the file. Maybe the audio had been corrupted. But no. The sound effects were still there. The sound of their footsteps echoed loudly. Their breathing was audible. Even the low hum of the fleshy walls moving could be heard. But they weren't speaking. Goku and Vegeta always bickered in situations like this. Even in tense moments, Goku would make a joke and Vegeta would scoff. But here, nothing. Then they turned a corner and stopped dead in their tracks. The camera panned forward, showing what had frozen them in place. There was someone, or something, standing at the end of the tunnel. At first, I thought it was another version of Majin Buu, but as the camera zoomed in, I realized it wasn't Buu at all. It was Goku, or rather, it looked like Goku. But there was something terribly wrong with him. This Goku stood motionless, facing away from the camera. His GI was torn, as if he had been in a brutal battle. His skin was sickly pale, almost grey. His hair was messier than usual, sticking up in jagged spikes. And then he twitched, a subtle, jerky movement. His head tilted slightly, but just enough to send a wave of discomfort through me. Vegeta took a step forward. The other Goku twitched again. And then he turned around. The second Goku's eyes were entirely black. Not just the pupils, his entire eyes were pitch black. A distorted, choking sound came from the speakers. It wasn't coming from Vegeta or the real Goku, it was coming from him. Then, without warning, the screen glitched violently. The video turned to static for several seconds, the speakers erupting with harsh, grating noises. It sounded like distorted screams buried under layers of white noise. I tried to pause the video, but my media player wasn't responding. The static cleared, and the screen cut to a close-up of the other Goku's face. His black eyes were locked directly onto the viewer, onto me. And then, in a slow, distorted voice, he spoke. "You shouldn't be watching this." The screen glitched again. My heart pounded in my chest. The air in my room felt heavier, suffocating. When the video resumed, Goku and Vegeta were gone. Instead, the screen showed a barren, endless wasteland. The sky was wrong, not blue, not red, just a swirling mass of darkness. In the distance, a silhouette stood motionless. I didn't want to see more. I tried to close the media player. I tried to turn off my computer, but nothing was working. And then, the silhouette in the distance started walking toward the screen, slowly, methodically, unstoppable. The humming noise returned, growing louder and louder until it felt like it was inside my own head. Then, the screen cut to black. A single phrase appeared in blood-red letters. "Are you still watching?" My screen went completely black, and then my computer shut itself off. I sat there in my darkened room, my hands shaking, my breath uneven. I told myself it was just a corrupted file, some elaborate fan-made horror edit. It had to be. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. And that night, when I closed my eyes to sleep, I could still hear the whisper, "You shouldn't be watching this." I sat there in the dark, staring at my blank computer screen, heart hammering in my chest. My room was silent, too silent. It felt like all the sound had been drained from the air, leaving only the echo of those last words imprinted in my mind. "Are you still watching?" I told myself it was just a corrupted file, a joke, a fan edit meant to scare people. But why did it feel so wrong? I reached for the power button, pressing it hesitantly. The screen flickered back to life. My desktop loaded normally. No sign of the video. Maybe my PC had just crashed. Maybe it wasn't anything supernatural, just a bad file that had forced a restart. I exhaled, forcing a nervous laugh. But then, something caught my eye. There was a new file on my desktop. It hadn't been there before. The name was simple, but chilling. DBZ Final Cut 2 AV. My stomach twisted. I hadn't downloaded anything else. I hadn't saved another version of the file. So where the hell had this one come from? My fingers hovered over the mouse. Every rationale. Part of me screamed delete it, but my curiosity was overpowering. I had to know. I clicked the file. The video opened in full screen, automatically. I tried to move the cursor, but it was locked. My keyboard was unresponsive. The video had taken control of my system. The screen remained black for several seconds. No sound, no distortion, just silence. Then, the video faded in. It was Goku, but not as I had ever seen him before. He was sitting on the ground, alone, his arms wrapped around his knees. His orange gi was in tatters, his bare chest covered in deep cuts and bruises. His breathing was heavy, uneven, as if he had been crying. The animation was eerily smooth, more detailed than any Dragon Ball Z episode I had ever seen. It felt too real. The subtle rise and fall of his chest, the slight trembling in his fingers. He was whispering something. At first it was too soft to make out. I leaned in, my ears straining to catch the words. And then I heard it. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I shuddered. His voice was different, lower, raspier, broken. It didn't sound like Goku at all. The camera slowly zoomed in. His head lifted slightly, but his eyes were still hidden beneath his unruly hair. He whispered again. He changed everything. This isn't real. This isn't real. The audio started glitching. A deep, warping hum filled the speakers, vibrating in my skull. Then, without warning, Goku's head snapped up. His eyes were completely black. I recoiled. His mouth twisted into a hollow, joyless grin. His lips moved, but the words didn't match the sound. It was like I was hearing something that wasn't being spoken. You're part of it now. The screen glitched violently. The entire scene changed. Now, it showed me. No, not me. It was my room, my exact room. The same layout, the same posters on the walls, the same dim glow from the computer screen illuminating the darkness. But there was someone sitting in my chair. My breath caught in my throat. The figure was hunched forward, staring at the screen, staring at me. I knew what was coming before it even happened. Slowly, painfully, the figure turned its head. It was Goku, or whatever was pretending to be him. His grin stretched too wide. His eyes were pits of empty blackness. His head cocked at an unnatural angle, as if his neck had been snapped. He raised a single finger, pointing at me. Then the screen went black. I screamed and threw myself away from the desk, my chair toppling over. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might explode. I scrambled to my feet, chest heaving, sweat dripping down my face. My computer was off. The room was silent. I didn't know what to do. My instincts told me to run, to leave, to get out of the house. But my legs wouldn't move. It felt like the air itself had become heavy, pinning me in place. Then, my phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my skin. With shaking hands, I pulled it from my pocket. There was one new message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. The text was simple. "Are you still watching?" I dropped my phone. A breath hitched in my throat. My skin crawled. I wasn't alone in the room anymore. I could feel it. Something was behind me, watching. I turned around. The room was empty, or at least that's what my eyes told me. But every part of my body screamed that something was there, watching, waiting. My skin prickled, a deep, primal fear rooting me in place. My phone was still on the floor, the screen dim but displaying that one chilling message. "Are you still watching?" I reached down with trembling hands. hesitating for just a second before picking it up. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could reply. I could try to call someone. But who? And what would I even say? Hey, I think a haunted Dragon Ball Z video is messing with me. Yeah, that wouldn't go over well. My computer suddenly turned back on by itself. I spun around so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. The monitor flickered. Static at first, then a distorted image. It was the same room again. My room. The same angle. The same dim lighting. Except the chair in the video wasn't empty anymore. There was someone sitting in it. I took a step back. My pulse pounded in my ears. The static buzzed louder. Then the figure moved. Slowly, methodically, it raised its head. 2 black, empty eyes locked onto mine through the screen. Goku, or whatever this thing was. His grin stretched unnaturally wide, far beyond what a human face should be able to do. His neck cracked as his head tilted in that sickening, unnatural angle, and then his mouth moved. No sound came from the speakers. The screen glitched violently as his lips formed silent words. I didn't need to hear them. I knew what he was saying. "Are you still watching?" I slammed the power button. The computer didn't turn off. The video continued, the image growing darker as Goku's figure began to rise. My breath hitched. My hands shook as I yanked the power cord out of the wall. The screen stayed on, and then he started to step forward, toward me. I staggered back, my back hitting the wall. The static screeched through the speakers, warping into something almost like a voice, a deep, guttural growl. The camera in the video shifted. It was moving toward my door, my actual door. I heard it, a soft creak. From behind me, I turned my head, slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. The door, my door, was opening, inch by inch. The darkness beyond the doorway felt deeper than it should have, like it wasn't just the absence of light, like it was something else. The video feed continued to distort. The Goku figure was gone from the screen now. The camera kept moving, but there was nothing there anymore. Then, the message popped up again. "Are you still watching?" A whisper echoed in my room. Wham! I sprinted. I didn't care where I was going. I just ran. Down the stairs, through the front door, into the street. I kept running until my lungs burned and my legs ached. Only then did I stop, gasping for breath under the flickering glow of a street lamp. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers numb and clumsy. I needed to call someone, anyone. But when I unlocked the screen, there was another message. "You can't run from this." My vision blurred. My head felt light. I turned in circles, scanning the empty streets. I wasn't safe. I would never be safe. The whispers returned, soft, distant. "Are you still watching?" No, I was being watched. I stood there, under the flickering street lamp, my breath ragged, my hands shaking as I clutched my phone. My mind was racing. My instincts screamed for me to keep running, but I knew there was nowhere to run. The air around me felt wrong. The whisper still echoed in my ears. "Are you still watching?" I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. It was just a video, just some sick prank. But deep down, I knew better. I looked at my phone again. There was another message. "It doesn't matter where you go." My stomach twisted. The words blurred on the screen as something shifted in the corner of my vision. A figure, standing beneath the next street lamp. At first, it was just a shadow, tall, unmoving. But then, as the light flickered, I saw it. Orange guy. Black. Hollow. Eyes. That impossibly wide grin. My chest tightened. It was him. Or it. It didn't move. But I felt it watching. My phone buzzed again. I forced myself to look. Another message. "Stop running. You already know how this ends." I couldn't breathe. My legs felt frozen in place. I had to do something. Anything. I opened my contacts, fumbling for the emergency dial. My fingers barely worked. but I managed to press 911. But bye. Ringing started. Then it stopped. A voice answered. At first I thought it was static, but then a distorted voice whispered through the speaker. I told you not to watch. I dropped the phone. The street lamp above me flickered wildly, casting long, shifting shadows across the pavement. The figure beneath the next light tilted its head, and then it took a step forward. I turned and ran again, as fast as I could. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. But as I turned each corner, past each block, my surroundings never changed. The same houses, the same streetlights, the same darkness. I was running in circles. No, I was trapped. I stopped, panting, my body drenched in sweat. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I looked up. He was still there, closer. The whispers grew louder. Are you still watching? No. I wasn't watching anymore, but he was. I stepped back, shaking my head. This isn't real, I muttered. This isn't real. The figure moved closer. The world around me glitched. The sky warped. The streetlights flickered out. Everything vanished. Only darkness remained, and in that darkness I saw him. Not a video, not a screen. Him, face to face, grinning, whispering. You are part of this now. And then, nothing.